Internal auditing. Sounds a bit uncomfortable, but there's some good news. This is a SOP template that you might be able to copy paste 100% without necessarily changing much of it at all. So what's this video about, you may ask? First of all, I would like to give you some context to this process. And secondly, there's a QMS record required by this process, the so-called company audit program, which you still need to customize a little bit for your company setup. Starting off with some background information. You have to audit your QMS regularly, and this is the SOP that describes how you do it. The regulatory requirements are in this case actually pretty straightforward. The idea is that through auditing, you ensure that your QMS is compliant, that it's effectively implemented and maintained, or in other words, that it is followed through with according to the processes that you defined. You then have to have a company general process in place for auditing. You have to have a audit program in place, which we will get to later. And you have to keep documentation regarding each and every audit. And finally, management is responsible to make sure that nonconformities are resolved and followed up with. Before we go into how we implemented those requirements in our template, one more basic question. What could an internal audit generally look like in a startup just starting from scratch? Large companies may very well have some of their own employees going through some additional training to qualify as an internal auditor. Now, obviously, those still cannot audit their own work, their own team, their own work stream. But the point being here is, in the future, you can very well have this role of an internal auditor within your own company. In the beginning, though, it might make sense to hire an external person for that. And that doesn't have to be a super professional regulatory guru. For example, you could just contract a colleague working in regulatory for another company. He or she just needs to be qualified, impartial, and free of conflicts of interest. We'll get to that in a bit. Last word though, if you're looking for something in between that regulatory guru and that dude from the other cubicle of your co-working space, you can also write us an email. Now, a quick run through our process template. First off, we defined criteria for auditor qualification. This is rather arbitrary, and you can always change it to make it even stricter. We defined what we felt was minimum criteria based on ISO 13485, which says that the selection of auditors and conduct of audits shall ensure objectivity and impartiality of the audit process. Auditors shall not audit their own work. This is also what we will see covered in the next section here as auditing guidelines. As you now know, better don't change any of this, as it directly covers you for 13485 compliance. We then go on to define how nonconformities should be classified. This is something that we came up with based on our own audit experience, and it's not really a hard requirement, so feel free to change any of this if it bugs you. The process itself is actually pretty straightforward. You compile a program to schedule audits for the next few years, you conduct those audits, and you follow up with the results. If your auditor should ever ask, this first step here represents the risk-based approach to your QMS. Typically, you audit sample parts of your QMS every year, so that after about 3 years or so, you've audited your QMS for the entirety of all 13485 requirements. Additionally, though, you might have some more risky processes that you should audit more oftenly, for example, every year. Secondly, here's how you conduct audits. This basically describes all the information that should be found in your audit plan and your audit report. Who participated in the audit, what was audited, and so on. In the last process step, we have 2 interfaces. One, all major nonconformities should result in a CAPA, to make sure that you actually resolve it. That's not a hard requirement that you can find anywhere in the ISO 13485, but it's just best practice as far as we've learned. And second, a summary of all audits conducted throughout the year should be part of your management review. So keep those two other processes in mind. We're now approaching the end. You may have wondered, what's about this audit program? Sounds complex. How do I do it? Do you have a template for that? And the answer is, no, we don't, because companies tend to set this up very differently. I will show you an example though, which is rather simple. Remember, one way to approach this is that over the course of 3 years, you audit your QMS for the entirety of the ISO 13485. So in our audit program, we wrote down all applicable ISO 13485 sections here, plus the requirements related to vigilance and post-market surveillance from MDD and MDR, plus the QMS core processes, which should be audited every year. We then plan rough audit dates for the next few years and add a lead auditor for those. Finally, don't forget to add a auditing period for that time. And that's it for the record. I hope you got the entire idea. And good luck with your audits.